Hello everyone, welcome back to another Cosmic Background YouTube video, and today we're doing another video in the series of Kerbal Space Program tutorials. Today we're going to be showing you how to build your own rocket and get into suborbit around Kerbin. So let's get started. I'm going to resume save one of my games. No flights in progress, there it is. This is a sandbox mode. It's just going to be a simple hopper that gets to suborbit in Kerbin. So this simple hopper, like I said, single stage, one Kerbal into suborbit. This is basically the first step in Kerbal Space Program if you want to get good at the game, is to complete a suborbit flight. Right, so let's hop into the vehicle assembly building and start building. First things first, name your craft, because that's important. I'm going to call it a Hopper V1, because it's a version. Right. So build menu over here. Here are your options for a command pod. For if you want to get one Kerbal into suborbit, I would choose the Mark 1 command pod. It's just the simplest. This raindrop in the bottom changes the paint so it looks cooler. If you want it, whatever paint is your jazz, go ahead and do it. This is my jazz. Right, so that's the command pod. It's where your Kerbal will command the craft, like the name says. And then for your parachute, to get down to Earth, to slow down your descent, you go to Utility, not Science, Utility, and grab a Mark 16 parachute. It's the simplest one. It fits on top of the Mark 1 command pod perfectly. It slows down your descent. There are some advanced parachute settings, but I don't really dabble into that because whenever I try it, it does its job. That's basically for if you're on a different planet with a less atmosphere like Duna or Ilu, you would want to change the minimum pressure. But if you're doing a suborbit or an orbit around Kerbal, this should be perfectly fine. Okay, so then underneath this, we want to have our heat shield to protect our Kerbals from atmospheric thermal heats, which are kind of scorching as we hit the atmosphere. So we have a heat shield to help with that, do that job. It's a 1.25 heat shield that fits nicely and snugly on the command pod. So this is what's going to be coming back to Kerbin for the entire ride. This is what's going to be coming. So after this, we want to have a decoupler. A decoupler basically separates what's under the decoupler from what's above the decoupler. So we have a TD12. I'm going to use a TD12 for this, if it's snug. And I missed the placement. Or, no, I did not miss the placement. No, I did miss the placement. Okay. It should fit. Why is it not fitting? Oh yeah, it's fine. We're good. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. If you want to zoom in, by the way, it is Shift and scroll bar. But with the decoupler, you want to check that this is pointing up, arrow pointing up. Since I'm paranoid, I'm going to just delete it and do it again. Right, TD12. Yeah, that's what's actually supposed to happen. That's what's going to happen if you have a larger size decoupler. It just covers up the heat shield. But, okay. Next we want a fuel tank. So this is what's going to be powering our descent. Or no, our ascent onto the suborbit of Kerbin. I'm just going to use one FLT800. Or, actually, we could, yeah, let's just use one FLT800. It's the big one. But we'll get to suborbit for us finally. Actually, let's change the color scheme because that's just not my jazz. Here we go. Let's do this guy. Wow. Right. Next is our engine. There it is. Engines. Right. Two of my favorite engines here are the Reliant, which is this guy, and the Swivel. So for suborbit, I would choose Swivel. Here's why. Because Swivel can thrust vector, which makes it so much easier to control the craft. So, because if you have more control, I would take it over to more power, which is just a little bit more power with the Reliant. But since we're suborbiting and not orbiting, a swivel would be good. So with the swivel, you don't need an RCS right now. With the Reliant, you don't need it either, but it's kind of hard to control. And if you're new to the game, it's going to be kind of hard. Right, so that's the craft that's going to get us to space, guys. Or not really space, suborbit space. Right, so we're going to launch this craft. Actually, before we do that, we have to know who's coming on the craft. So that's a craft for one Kerbal. So for default, that's Jebediah. He's the pilot. He's the best pilot in the game. Or, yeah, he is the best pilot in the game, I think, because that's why he's a default. So if you want to change it, you can change it. There's some pretty self-explanatory buttons over in the crew section, which is up there. One beginner mistake is if you don't load your crew before, then it'll say rocket not capable or some warning message will pop up, which is not fun to deal with when you're trying to play the game. Right, so we're gonna launch this craft. Let's do it. A hopper to suborbit. So there are going to be some beginner flight controls over here in this launch complex. So this is a launch complex, I should tell you first. Altitude controls, or what it tells you what the altitude is. Some helpful fuel gauges and pretty cool metrics over here. Lower left is where you see your not your altitude, your flight controls, roll, pitch, yaw. So for for yaw, it's A and D. For roll, it's Q and E. And for pitch, it's W and S. And we have the staging over here. Make sure it's firing this engine, then decoupling, and then firing the parachute last. Right. Let's light this candle, guys. Oh, by the way, biggest part I forgot. The nav ball. That's gonna just tell you it's like your GPS. It's like Google GPS, except in space. So it makes it not GPS. Okay, I think you get the point. Right, that's Jeb. We can EVA him, but we won't. Right, let's light this candle now. Oh, one last thing before you light the candle is you press space to launch, but don't do it yet because you haven't maxed out your throttle. Some people will press space and then think, why is their rocket not launching? It's because you have not maxed out your throttle, which is kind of cool. Okay, anyways, SAS, toggle it on, which is T. It's just like an autopilot that helps you it's not an autopilot, it helps you get the bearings of the flight control. So, let's do it now. Let's do it. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Here we go. That is the swivel engine lighting. I'm just doing a bit of yaw maneuvers to do the gravity turn. So the gravity turn is basically what helps you get into your suborbit. Right. So just a little bit, don't overdo it, otherwise you'll go into some spinning flips, which you don't want to do. Just like once every like 5 or so seconds. And that's the paragrade, I forgot what it's called. Prograde, prograde marker, which helps you make your ship in the right direction. But more flight controls, advanced flight controls in later videos. Right. I'm going to check the map view because that's important, and we're running out of fuel. Right, so that is our apiapsis. You can see it's rising, 45,000. And that's basically showing, if you're past this apiapsis, you're going to start going down. So that's what you don't want. And don't panic as it keeps extending. It's okay. This is actually pretty good. Right. It's at like 180,000. For a suborbit, it's not bad. It's because I use a lot of fuel. Right, so we will be in space shortly, as you can see. Space in Kerbin starts 70,000. So I'm going to jettison this booster. So you press space to jettison, which is kind of cool. Boom. We have jettisoned our booster. Right, so that'll continue to drift away. It's not because... Okay, there we go. Now, as soon as you pass the space barrier, you'll start hearing the music. It's nice and peaceful and tranquil music, but that's cool. Right, so this is a suborbit. We have our parachute left. As soon as we pass over this apiapsis, our altitude, you can see it's going up, starts going down. Don't panic. Perfectly normal. With the real orbit, what you do, if you check out my latest video though, but what you do is you circle the entire Kerbin, and then you'll never really go down, like you feel your altitude dropping, unless you're nearing the periapsis or like for a very long time. But for a suborbit, it'll continue to drop and you'll land somewhere over there. Right, so a cool feature in Kerbal Space Program is time warp. So this is what you do. Bam. You press the comma or great. I used to say greater than or less than. The period button is for time warping greater, and the comma button for time warping less. Right. So you can see that we are above the Earth, 220,000 altitude. So we start time warping towards the ground. Quick thing to note is that you're like Anuj. When you like deploy the parachute, when this turns green, then you press space and deploy the parachute. But let's time warp to that point. Right, you can see our altitude dropping perfectly fine. Don't panic. We have to return to space. It's gravity. Okay, now you can see it's red. We can't time warp faster. Now it's orange. Can we time warp faster? Okay, we can time warp 2. It's red now. It's still red. Right. Here it is. So, we're going through the part of the atmosphere. That part is when it burns up. But don't worry. It's fine. It's fine. We're good. It's called the star glow, this part, but that's a fun fact. Fun fact. So this part takes some time. You just time warp through it. You can time warp like 4 times. While your ship's in acceleration, you can't time warp up to like 100. Okay, here we go. Now we're at 10,000. I think you have to blow the parachute soon. Right, I'm gonna deploy it. Right, I deployed the parachute at 7,000, 8,000 altitude. We'll continue to sink down. Now you still might be panicking. I'm going 250 meters per second at the ocean, and I don't want to kill Jebediah. But the thing is, the parachute just like randomly opens like at like 200 feet and like completely slows your descent. I'll show you. Right, so we're gonna go down to like, okay, it gives you this warning when you try and time warp too fast, but I usually ignore it. Right, okay, we're at 1,000 feet. And there you go. Now, when you hear that sound, it means the parachute's completely deployed. Now you can see our speed dropping completely down to like 10 meters per second. And then you can just time warp this part because it's really slow. There we go. Come on. Come on, Jebediah. Come on, Jebediah, land. It sounded like an explosion, but it really wasn't. Well done, guys. We've landed. You can see Jebediah. We can EVA him. That's Jebediah. Outside the capsule. It might look like exploding right now, but he's outside. Look, there it is. I have to press space, and I'm in the water now. Jebediah's in the water. But anyways, guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Smash that likes button, and check out my website, link in the description. Bye!